Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cobbletalk. This is episode 2 of the podcast, but we're covering episode 3 of The Penguin. I know it's confusing. This is all Lockmort's fault, so
It's not my fault.
I'll start the introductions with him. I'm Ben, but this is Lockmort. It's not his fault, but hello. I just needed a good segue.
I wanted this to be episode 3. You guys said, no, this should be episode 2. So here we are.
How would this be episode 3 when we haven't even done an episode 2?
Oh, because the first episode was episode 1 and 2. We just combined them into one. But no. We're doing it like you guys want. So this is episode 3. This is episode 2. But we're talking about episode 3. There we go.
Correct. If we'd only had the idea a week sooner, everything would be fine. We wouldn't have had to worry about it.
True.
Justin, coming at us again from the office of the detective in BioShock.
That's right.
How are you?
Which works perfectly for how the show is. The show has a bit of like a detective-y vibe. We're the detectives watching this whole story unfold. Right, but I'm doing well.
Say it had a BioShock vibe, and I was like, I don't.
No, that's not. I mean, you could kind of say that with the water, right?
No.
I mean, it's kind of it's a bit of a stretch, but
Also with this, Bill, I don't have anything to say interesting here for you. I already used up the blaming on Lockmort, the interesting background on Justin. You look nice. How's that? You look clean.
Thank you. I changed my shirt a minute ago. I wasn't crazy about the one I was wearing, so
okay, yeah.
I made sure to go off camera before doing that.
That was, I mean,
but no, it's good I'm happy that views, it's been a long week. I had family come in earlier this week, so like this was the first day that they're gone, so I'm able to like relax and keep my sanity in a quiet house. And
nice.
Yeah, it's good to come out of the closet every week and record with you guys.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's an interesting way to put that.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. So no, it's good to be here.
Let's waste no more time and just hop right into the episode. This episode number 3 in the limited time series of The Penguin on HBO, called Bliss, simply Bliss. And of course, we didn't know why it was going to be called that. We knew the name in advance, but we didn't know why. We know why now. But let me just hear your guys', I don't want to get into plot points here, but just broad overview. Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? And why? We'll start in reverse order, as we tend to do with Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was another excellent episode. What immediately struck me when it ended was, again, it was just more immaculate pacing from beginning to end. Like there was one time I only checked my phone out of the timing out of curiosity to see how much time had gone by. And it was already like 47, 48 minutes. I'm like, wow, this is almost over. It's like flown by. And the opening scene was extremely unexpected. I don't want to go into too much detail, just my broad thoughts. Extremely unexpected, but extremely effective. And how it ended was a wallop. So it did what any TV show should do. At the end of the episode, I wanted to immediately watch the next episode, and it's a bummer I have to wait another week. It's like we're returning to traditional TV again, even though it's streaming, but that's the way it goes. So no, it was excellent. So excited to watch more, and I'm sure much like you guys, I'm just so stunned at how good this show is, how well executed it is. So.
Definitely.
Justin, how did you feel about Bliss?
I thought it was great. I also loved how it began. I was eating dinner. I was getting dinner ready, and I missed the beginning, like the first 10 seconds. And I'm like, hold on, wait. Because I kind of saw what was going on, and I'm like, wait, did I miss something here real quick? Went back to see if there was any indication of time. I'm like, no, okay, but it looks like I think this is what's going on. So that intro before the title card comes up was great. All the way through. We learned more information, more backstory on really a couple characters. One main one, but we learn a bit about a few others too. And the end was great. I mean, so far, I feel like every episode has ended. I don't want to necessarily say on a cliffhanger, but definitely with the hook in you, like wanting to come back to watch the next one. So I think it was really great.
Lockmort, You're up.
Yeah, of course, I agree. I thought it was again another great episode. That's 3 in a row now. We're almost halfway there, so it's gonna be hard for them to screw it up now, and unless they screw up the ending. I thought it was great that it started with like a flashback. I don't know. Well, I do know why. This episode reminded me a lot of Lost, because this is how Lost episodes used to work. Like cool flashback and an action cliffhanger at the end, where something really big happens, and like the music cuts in and it just stops, and you're like, "Well, what the fuck? Where's the rest of it?" So no, I thought it was really great. The thing that stuck with me the most is something Justin touched on last week, and that is that a lot of characters have like multiple layers to them, and what they show us isn't necessarily true. So what they showed us last week or told us last week about Sophia clearly isn't true, which is really cool. Which I think is awesome. And Justin was right last week.
When that came up, I'm like, yes, I was so right about that. Hell yeah.
You were. And also they named the drugs after Far Cry 5, which is cool. I'm sure that was the inspiration of it.
It was definitely the inspiration.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Had nothing to do with the thematic meaning of the drug or anything.
No, the drug, it's definitely not from the comic books either.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
But,
yes.
but what do you think, Ben?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to just repeat the same thing as you guys did. So instead, I'll say I thought it was really good, because nobody said that yet. But yeah, I particularly liked the fact that we got backstory on, at least, we got a lot of backstory on one character. We got a little bit of backstory on a lot of other characters. And of course, in a show that's only going to be 8 episodes long, and we know that obviously a lot of things deviate from the source material, from the comic books, from previous iterations, it's really good to get that information. And I think we even speculated in the past that we were going to get some more backstory on specifically Victor. Obviously, there's other, with Oz and Sophia, we knew there had to be more there. But with Victor, it was kind of like, well, is he just going to be this nameless, I guess he has a name, but this just random kid, or are we going to find out a little more about him? And we did. So I thought it was fantastic. I thought it went well the whole way through. I totally agree with Bill about the pacing issue. It got to like the crescendo end music, which I'll talk about specifically that music later on when we get to that point. And I was like, no, this can't be the end already. And I looked down, it was like 55 minutes already. And I'm like, no, that's impossible. This just started. So I'm really enjoying it. I love the pacing. And I am relatively picky when it comes to television shows. And I know that this is it's an approximately 8-hour commitment, right? So it's not like it's that big of an investment that I would ditch it if I didn't like it. But so far I'm like, I literally looked at the end of the episode. I was like, this is episode 3. There's 8 episodes. Oh no. Like it's almost over. So that's how I was feeling about it. But since we've all already started talking about the beginning of the episode, and by the way, just in case it's not clear, it should be, but in case this is your first time around, we're going to spoil the episode. So don't watch this before you watch the episode. Don't listen to this before
you. Who would do that?
I don't know, but there's going to be somebody. There's going to be some random person in the comments like, "Thanks a lot, guys."
Yeah, true.
This is about the episode. Okay.
So when Batman shows up at the very end, I can't believe it.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll start at the very beginning of the episode, and so we see first. The very first thing is something I need help with. We find out that Victor has a girlfriend. Or at least a girl that, they're somewhat romantically entangled. I did not remember her name.
Graciela.
Graciela?
I took that note in my phone. I think it was on his call already.
Yeah. So what I wrote down in my note was girlfriend. And that was my bad. Anyway, so we find out he has a girlfriend. He's supposed to be meeting her. He goes back to his house where he lives with his family, an apartment, and they talk for a little while. And of course, it's a traditional family style type thing where they're making dinner and they want him to stick around, and he wants to leave to go hang out with his girlfriend, and the family's upset, and his father tells him like, you could be so much more than what you are, basically. And he leaves and goes up to a rooftop. We see him with his friends, and then his friend's cousin comes in, and we already know from the previous conversation his dad doesn't like the friend. That doesn't really have a lot of bearing on the story moving forward that we see, but what we do see is the effects of everything that happens in the Batman. We see the after effects of the flood, the explosions all around them. They're expecting some fireworks or something, but they're not expecting this gigantic flood that goes, and Victor actually watches as his family's home is flooded and, presumably, but we know as the audience, all killed in the aftermath. So let's start off with that, guys. What did you think of the sequence there, with it being a flashback in general? How do you feel about flashbacks in shows like this? Talk about the family dynamic a little bit if you want, and then the actual scene of the terror of that night. Locke, we'll start with you.
Well, I wasn't a huge fan at first because this felt like a typical setup flashback, and I thought it was a bit too on the nose. Where the dad blatantly tells him like, "Oh, you can be so much more. Don't do drugs." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, guys, we get it. Like he's a good guy. Okay, fun." And it's setting up like I'm sure that what's his name, Squid, will come back later on and stuff. So that'll play back at some point, because otherwise, why introduce that character? But I think the flood was really cool. I think seeing that again and harkening back to the Batman was awesome and done in a great way. And it also, he already told us this happened, but we never really saw it, so you don't really know. But seeing his family basically getting washed away, and actually, I guess they're dead. But seeing it on screen makes it more makes Vic a little bit more relatable, maybe, or makes him more makes people more emotional invested in him. I think this was his episode. I think so far the other ones all had plot points revolving around them, but this was mostly Vic's episode, I think. And normally I love flashbacks, especially I touched on it earlier in Lost, shows like Lost, where flashbacks teach us something extra or are part of the story. Really, this one, I'm not sure yet where it fits in. So we'll have to see in future episodes. I'm sure it'll happen again. Maybe we'll see what happens to other characters in flashbacks too. That would be really cool. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of like the first 3 to 4 minutes, but once the flood came in, I thought it was awesome, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to cut myself real quick and just comment on that and say that I'm also not a real big fan of flashbacks like that. And this one in particular, I thought was, like you said, kind of on the nose. Like, oh yeah, the dad's a really good guy who's going to tell him not to get involved with something bad. And then the whole show's about him being involved with something bad, right? But I understand why it was necessary. I understand why it was there. But the bigger thing that impacted me with this was that I think in the Batman, the movie, we know that the city there's a terroristic act that floods the city, and we know that there's lots of damage, but you don't really know the gravity of it. Exactly what's happening. Of course there's lots of destruction and things are bad, but like 6-7 floors up on this apartment building, we're just flooded and immediately everyone is done for. And just, I think that adds a lot more weight to the understanding of what we saw in the first couple episodes with Oz. Basically saying like the whole distribution network's wiped out. And it's like, why? It's just a little flood. No, this like leveled buildings. This killed entire floors of apartments of people. So I thought that was really interesting. But
yeah,
I'll talk more later. But Bill, let me know.
Yeah, I actually really, really liked this flashback for a few reasons. It is kind of funny how the first 3 episodes, the second episode was it was like a Sophia cold open, right? And her in the therapy scene, I believe, right? Yeah. So it's like 3 episodes in a row where we get sort of very narrowly focused character informative scenes, right? I think this one was much more along the lines of the pilot episode with the Penguin, where it serves as learning so much about the character themselves, while at the same time, it provides an almost sort of inciting incident. In the first episode, the Penguin, he kills Alberto, which is really the inciting incident for the whole show. Whereas this scene ends with the flood. That's kind of the inciting incident of setting Victor on the current life path that he's on. His entire life is effectively washed away. His family, his home, he's left stranded, and we know that he lives in among the poorest parts of Gotham City. So he's basically reduced to nothing. So he becomes a petty criminal, jacking cars and whatever else. But some few details that I really liked in that scene is, one, it wasn't just his father sort of scolding him about, you can do so much more. Within that scene was him sort of confronting his father about, hey, you should be getting more, right? You're finding these really rare car parts that this dealer or mechanic or whomever is not giving you a fair price for, So his character was kind of informed about fighting to get what you deserve, which is what the Penguin told him in one of the previous other 2 episodes, right? He's always harping on about, we have to fight and scrape and scratch and claw to get what we deserve, because nothing's going to ever be given to us and the world's not fair, and it's up to you ultimately, right? And another detail that I pointed out, maybe you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but his stutter started to come out again. One when he started confronting his father about needing the car part, and another when his father was confronting him about meeting his friend's cousin, whoever the ne'er-do-well was, the gang member, the drug dealer, right? So his stutter came out again. When he didn't have a stutter at all was when he was talking to the girlfriend. So that's when he's totally at ease and comfortable. So I think it really told us so much about Victor in that one scene, and was the inciting incident, obviously, with the flood, that kind of, we understand why he's in the position that he's in, reduced to jacking cars, right? Another thing that it reinforces, I think, Victor he's not only the kind of core heart of the show, I think he's also kind of an audience insert as well. It's like, we, the audience, are, what would we do in this situation? Would we kind of veer towards crime to get what we want? Sort of dealing drugs or being a driver or something relatively nonviolent if we had to? Or are we just going to live, in the projects, doing the same thing, in and out, spinning our wheels, going nowhere, doing nothing, not advancing ourselves? So, yeah, it made me appreciate him so much more as a character. And I was kind of like you guys. I'm like, okay, where are they going with this when the scene started? And I'm like, okay, this is obviously a flashback because I thought his family was dead. And so that short scene of a few minutes told us so much about Victor, and reinforced how much of an important character he was going to be, and which is why the decision, I don't want to go into too much detail, but the decision that he made at the end, ultimately I understood why, and not just for narrative plot reasons, like, oh, of course he's gonna make the decision that he makes because of the show and plot armor or whatever. But no, I totally understood that. You understood why he made the decision that he did at the end of the episode, because everything, his life experience built up toward that moment for him. That sort of payoff, if you will, was earned with everything that we found out about him. So yeah, I thought it was really well done, and it makes me even more invested in one of the core characters moving forward. So which is great television, I think.
Justin, take us home on this opening sequence, and also, since you're the only one of the four of us that's Hispanic, interpret what was said by the mother at the beginning of the scene, because I actually went back and turned on subtitles and it just said speaking in Spanish. And I'm like, why? Why can't you just...
I actually thought that was really funny, because I've been watching the show with subtitles, and I was surprised that they didn't have it written out, which is weird because they have done it already with other languages, I believe, in the show. So I don't know why they chose to do that. I mean, yeah. So I don't have too much to add, because you guys kind of like got everything. My biggest thing, and I'll get into what the mother was saying in a moment, but like what I really liked about that scene was how visceral it was, especially the explosion. Especially, we're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing it as close as you can get without dying, basically, from Victor's perspective. I mean, it almost looks like nukes went off.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And it really showed how impactful those floods were. Because it wasn't just like, oh, there's a stick of dynamite and it blew up, a chunk of the dam or the seawall, whatever, and some water trickled in or came in. It was insane how aggressive and powerful those explosions were, to the point where it's like, well, I guess this was the water, how fast the water was rushing in, but like the gravel and asphalt chunks or whatever on the roof were shaking and everything. I thought that was really well done to really give us as the audience an idea of how insane it was to live through that. And we get a bit more of that in a different scene later on too, from Vic's perspective, that I thought was also really well done. But to the dynamic of his family, I actually thought that was really interesting, although not surprising. I didn't quite figure out exactly where they were from. I'm really bad with accents. But it was interesting to see the dynamic between his mother and his father, and the sister, presumably. And I mean, his mother was, for the most part, was just speaking very plain, to him, of just like, well, where were you? All this stuff. Like, you shouldn't go. Like at the end, she's like, please don't leave. And which for him is probably very difficult to hear that. And I'm sure, I mean, we didn't see that later in the episode necessarily. We saw other things kind of creep up, but I'm sure well, obviously, because he called her first. Like that's who he grabbed the phone to call. And I think that scene too of just hearing the music, you don't hear him say anything. You assume that she did pick up the phone. And like he just couldn't, there was nothing to be done. And I do think that what his father was saying too, it wasn't just necessarily like, oh, you can do more. It really does set up this, and it is a cliche because it is like, oh, he comes from a very like good family. Everybody's, just good-hearted people. He's a good
guy.
Yeah, exactly. And now you see a little bit of that in him where he's like, oh, we can do more. And his father's trying to instill in him. It's like, well, if you remember where we came from, this is enough. And I did kind of like that because it does ground the character a bit more. He isn't just and sure, it is a cliche, but I think it adds to the character for sure of like, he's not just some kid who got into crime because things were bad. It's like, there's a deeper reason he has nothing, and especially in that first episode, we believe he really does have nothing. But in this episode, we find out he has a girlfriend or whatever. So, and because I think Oz asks him in that first episode if he has anybody left, and he doesn't answer. He kind of like puts his head down, but he doesn't answer the question. And so, I mean, we also really don't know if his whole family's dead. It's easy to assume they died, given what it looked like. But I also wouldn't be shocked if it's like 2 episodes from now, his sister's alive on like, IVs or something in a FEMA center somewhere, whatever. But overall, I thought that beginning scene was very well done.
Nice. I was going to elaborate more, but you guys covered everything. I'm happy with that from what I said. So let's move on to the next scene we see is Oz and Victor in Oz's apartment, or probably one of Oz's apartments. It seems like he has, a little bit of moving around money maybe. And Oz starts it out by talking to Vic and telling him like, hey, we never, first of all, we're going out. You're going to be my driver. We're going out on this run. Or Victor definitely doesn't seem comfortable with that. Oz has bought him new clothes, and then he realizes like, oh yeah. Also, we didn't pay you. Let's pay you some money. You always got to ask because you never know what you're gonna get until you ask for it. And he hands him $1,000 and tells him it's going to be $1,000 a week. Victor is obviously very stunned by that because I assume, based on the family dynamics they showed, money is not something he's used to having. And after Oz tells him you got to ask for more, Victor just says, I want 2,000. And Oz is like, I appreciate it, but no. We move on to Oz going into his bedroom, which, by the way, his bedroom is a bank safe. It looks like not only do you see the bank safe door, but also there's safety deposit boxes inside, which is a cool touch. Moving on, Sophia's coming over while Oz is actually talking to somebody from the Maroney family. And she comes in, starts talking to Victor. His stutter gets super bad. He's very nervous. We see his stutter many, many times at the beginning of this episode. And it comes into a little bit of a plot point later, but I think it's going to be a very big plot point as we discuss at some point in the show. I don't know when that's going to be, but at some point I think that. So I'm just going to keep talking here for a minute. We find out that Victor is actually not going to go with them because Sophia says there's been a change of plans. Instead of moving on, scene by scene here, I want to keep talking about Victor, where he is. He stays at the apartment. At some point, he calls his girlfriend over. She comes over to hang out. They're having some beers. He's talking about, them hanging out, talking about the lifestyle he's leading, working for this guy, and goes to kiss her. And she stops him and tells him, I'm going to California. You should come with me. Victor thinks there's no way I can get out of this. I gotta, or he says, there's no way I can get out of this. I gotta stay with him. He's basically like, I've seen things, I've done things, I can't leave. And gets a call or gets a text, I think, figures out that Oz is going to be on his way home, tells her to leave. Let's go from there. Let's talk about all the way from the beginning where Oz is talking to him about getting what you want, asking for more of it, all the way up to, Sophia coming over, his interactions with her, and then his interactions with the girlfriend asking him to leave. Justin, since you went last time, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah. So I also really enjoyed this. I mean, it's just like, like every scene that comes like in the show is just so good. But I do think that is really interesting because you get a little bit more in a way of this. I don't want to say that Oz is almost like a father figure to Vic. I think you're getting a little bit of that where he's trying to father figure is a tough one. Mentor is probably a better word. But him just trying to tell him, yes, like, or before that, being cool. Like, oh yeah, we haven't talked about money. Oh, I forgot. Hey, look here, $1,000. Whoa, crazy. And then yes, teaching him that, oh, you got to ask. You should ask for more, and in the future. And yes, he goes ahead and tries and, again, appreciates the effort, but no. And at that point, he gets a call from the Maroney family. So Vic has to handle Sophia on his own and welcome her into the apartment, which that whole scene was great. Like the tension was there. You could really feel it. And yeah, I think the fact that she caught on very quickly that something is not right with Vic in that he's extremely nervous. His story's not really lining up, even though she doesn't know. And like what the reality is, like she knows that he's lying, or we assume that. And the scene with the lighter and everything, that shot with the lighter was done well. But one thing that I really, really liked before that, and this leads on to more because we find out later again about Sophia, but what I really liked about that moment was Vic tells Oz, like, she's the hangman. I don't want, like, are you nuts? Like, you're going to leave me with her? And he says, don't believe everything you read in the paper. And that right there, I'm like, I'm right. I'm right about it for sure. They wouldn't have written that in if I wasn't right about this. And later we find out more, but I loved that because that does set up more for her. And for us as an audience of like, okay, wait a minute. So Oz knows that she's not the hangman. So Oz knows more, which we assumed already that Oz knew a bit because it seemed like he was the one who gave her up. Now why and all that, we kind of know a little bit, but not, we still don't know who the hangman is, I guess.
Well, I don't think it excludes her being the hangman. I think there's just more to it. Like what I interpreted from it is that she's still involved with it. Maybe she didn't commit like 7 blatant murders, but I think we don't know. But I think he helped her in some way, or protected her by doing it himself, or something like that. Because she obviously doesn't want to talk about it, or she never told the truth to anyone. So there is some mystery there, which makes me think they did commit those 7 murders, but we don't know why or how or.
Let's. I have some thoughts about that, and I agree with both of you there actually. But there's a part later on in the episode where this comes up again. I think it'd be better served to dive deeper into that later.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. But overall, the rest of that moment, like where he just kind of jump away from when Sophia and Oz leave and we get that whole interaction with Bliss and all that stuff, which I'm sure you were going to jump into after this discussion. Hit like that. The talk that he has with his girlfriend, where like he it seems that he hasn't spoken to her since all these events have transpired. Right? She asks,
see the missed calls from her at that point too. Like he pulls up his phone, you see multiple missed calls from her. Yeah.
Okay, I missed that part. So even more so, because I mean, it looks like after the events of the flood, they just hadn't seen each other, or at least sometime after that. But definitely before, or not since he started working with Oz. So you do see him a bit more comfortable. You do see him like happy that she's there, and he thinks that he's going to have like some life again. And, you know, then she drops that bomb on him that she's going to leave, which she already mentioned about getting out of Gotham in that opening scene. You know, she's like, can't wait to leave. Can't wait to get out of this shithole, I think she said. So I think that set up more internal conflicts for him already, you know, just hearing that. And then when she offers him the ability to go with her, his inclination, is he wants to, but can't, feels like he can't. And I really like that. And then especially later on in the episode, we get a really good scene between him and Oz that I'm kind of curious about the intentions behind it, and how much validity there is. But that second scene was great.
Lockmore, go to you.
Yeah, I agree. What mostly stuck with me from that scene or this whole episode is how much I love Sophia, not just the actress because she's beautiful, but that character is so interesting to me because she's, like Justin said last week, like it's clear there's way more to it than what they're telling us, which is so awesome, I think. And like Justin also said, I think it was awesome that they're kind of dropping hints subtly every now and then. It's only 8 episodes, so they're moving pretty quickly. So from him saying, don't believe everything you hear, don't believe everything you read, to them blatantly saying, I'm not the hangman in a time span of 30 minutes is maybe a bit too much, but I thought it was great. I think it's becoming more clear that the crux of the show is going to be on Vic. Like that's where the big stuff is going to happen at some point. That's where the breaking point is going to happen. Probably episode 7. He's going to become either the antagonist or he's going to die, and that's going to entice the Penguin to become a complete maniac. Either one of those two things, I think. But no, I think it was handled really well. It's very weird to me how this show came to be, because this second scene really showcases that they know what they're doing, which is very important, I think. I didn't have that feeling yet in those first 2 episodes, especially that second episode with the mom. I loved it. It was great, but it all felt a little bit disjointed. And this is where the second scene here is where I realized, like, oh, okay, there's a plan here. There's a clear plan, and they know where they're going.
There's actually plot movement instead of just setup at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what do you think, Ben?
Well, I'm going to ask Bill first.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think the scene started off with Penguin sort of chastising him for leaning his face up against the window, right? And Sophia comments a little bit later on about, or maybe I think Vic commented on like how I think he said how bougie it was. Like Penguin's very particular about everything, right? He has his purple car. He has his, his suits and everything done up well because it's part of his insecurity, I think, right? With his, this disfigurement and his limp and everything. So it's a lot of projection from him. So it's Vic's little, like, I forget what Penguin's comment was. He was like, oh, you're dirtying up the window like that. But
grease.
Yeah, greasing up the window. But from the moment he opens the door and Sophia's there, all of her words and actions are about establishing dominance over the characters in the scene, because she goes in there and she lights up a cigarette immediately, like not asking permission, not like she's like, no, I'm going to light up a cigarette. After we know that Penguin is very particular about cleanliness and organization, and she's doing one of the most disgusting things. No offense to Lockmore, you're European, but I've heard horror stories about relatives, washing curtains and everything. But again, she not only does she light up a cigarette immediately, she has Vic light up one for her, like a more submissive act. And I mean, I understand his stutter. If I saw that woman in the doorway, I'd probably be pretty nervous and stuttering a bit too. But that's an aside. And
Especially if
then
you knew she was a killer or thought she was a killer.
well,
and
sometimes
he killed her brother, or he helped cover up her brother's murder.
Right.
of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah. And then when Penguin comes back in, and she obviously has Victor pegged. She's like, okay, this is like a little puppy dog, right? I can manipulate him all I want. He's like a child. So she has him. I think she has him scoped out pretty quickly as someone. And again, that's probably something that'll be something later on down the line. She knows she'll be able to manipulate him and whatever. But and then Oz comes back into the room, and again, she's establishing dominance. She's like, no, you're not going. You're gonna be my driver again. So she's already reducing Oz to where he started out at as a driver. So it's like, okay, we're gonna work together. No, you're gonna be my driver. You're gonna be basically starting out from it's almost like a temporary demotion, if they're gonna work together. So it's all about her establishing dominance over both of them, which
That's right. Yeah.
which sort of pays off later on when I forget, was it the triad assistant or the head guy where she's like, no, she said, no, Oz is working for me. Whereas Oz is like, oh, we're going to do a partnership, but she very quickly established that no, you're going to be working for me. I'm going to be the head honcho. So it was very, very good, subtle notes in that scene that were really, really informative that I appreciated. Aside from the stuff that you guys already mentioned about, don't believe everything you read in the paper and this, that, and the other. But like Lockmore said, you just see it in her eyes and her movements. Like she's always, especially when she looks at Vic, she's like always calculating, just like she's figuring out the equation of this person to solve them very, very quickly. So yeah, it makes me even more excited for other character interactions, more with her and Vic specifically, because it's like she has this kid figured out and she's going to be able to have him twist it around her finger any way she wants. So it's going to make for more great drama and conflict, I think, for sure.
And I kind of wanted to add something real quick because I don't remember exactly the story that Oz mentioned about when he was a driver, but I believe he said that he was a driver for like another mob boss, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't say who. And now it seemingly we're finding out that it's Sophia, unless he was a driver for somebody else as well. But it's sounding like it's Sophia, which
it could have been.
He was a kid.
I think in that other story he didn't name the mob boss, but he could have also been a driver for Sophia as well. It's certainly possible.
Well, no, he mentioned the mob boss, the one that he looked up to, which I think that's a different story.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This he mentioned about being a driver for a mob boss. Later on,
at some point in this episode, that's revealed that he was Sophia's driver.
Correct, but that's the thing. I don't know if that's who he was
same driver
saying, or if he was also a driver. If like he was always a driver until what we find out about what he did, and that's how we kind of moved up. Like I guess we don't know that yet. Maybe we'll find out, or maybe that's
gonna be a flashback for sure. We're gonna see that in a flashback. What happened there?
Yeah, probably.
We'll get thin Colin Farrell in that one.
Maybe.
Yeah. So the only points I wanted to bring up there, I just wanted to reiterate. I was gonna mention the coaster, the Vic putting the coaster on the table. That adds another thing to
how is cleanliness and organization. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and at this point, we I don't know exactly how long it's been at this point, but a couple days, a week since Vic and Oz met up. And presumably it seems like he's been staying there. Oz has been giving him a place to sleep and everything else. And I think that plays into the mentality that we see a little bit later, which I won't, get to that point yet. But it really seems like he has a mixture of, I like this guy, this guy's my mentor, and also Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of fear in there as well, right? There's probably a lot of fear in there too with Vic's relationship with Oz. So switching perspectives. That happens in between these two scenes of with him with the girlfriend and Sophia and Oz show up to see the triads, and specifically he sees I'm losing track of my notes here. Link.
Well, no, hold on.
well,
Sorry,
right.
I think you're jumping ahead a little bit. There's the scene of them where Oz and her find the drugs, or sorry, not
That's
find
what
the drugs,
they
but the
go to the
You're
drops.
lab.
right. That's where I was trying to get to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
they go
so
to the
they
which
lab.
is very important.
They go to the lab, kind of like a back alley, even as well. That they start seeing, Arkham Asylum bags from and everything, and they go inside the lab and they look around, and there's mushrooms just growing everywhere. And at some point, Oz goes to touch them. They tell him not to because it can infect the whole bunch. What we find out is it's not just magic mushrooms that anybody has. They're, especially in a town like Gotham, I'm sure they're a dime a dozen, maybe literally. But it's whatever they produce, the liquid that they produce, that they of course call Bliss. And we find out, there's also all these bags coming in or going out, one or the other, from Arkham, and that's somehow connected. We find out a little later how that works, and find out that these are, this isn't just your general psychedelic. It's more of a party drug, and it's supposed to be the next big thing. What we also find out during this scene is this whole operation wasn't just Sophia's brother's operation. It was really Sophia's operation.
Yeah.
And that was the case from the beginning, not just from now. So she was already, making these moves to move up, etc. Let's just do that scene real quick, and then we'll jump ahead to when he goes to see the triads. When they go to see the triads. Locke, we'll start with you. I'm just picking randomly here.
Sure. Are we gonna go scene by scene for the entire thing? Because the
We don't need to.
I'm worried is that we're gonna be here for 2 hours for a 1 hour
Yeah.
episode.
I don't think we
Maybe
need to do that. Yeah. I also just didn't want to dump too much and be like, let's talk
course.
about all that.
Yeah, of course.
However
I
you want to take it,
understand.
it's fine.
I thought the drug scene was cool. What struck me the most is that he didn't want to shake the guy's hand, or he was just looking at him like, "What the fuck are you?" Which was pretty funny, and once again it shows that how much he's insistent on cleanliness, I think, or on being clean. The drugs themselves, it's clear that Scarecrow is going to be somehow involved, I think. I don't know how, or I don't know when, but if I'm not mistaken, that is the drug that Scarecrow uses, right? Isn't that the same thing, like the mushrooms and then
I don't know the answer to that.
both from the comics, and I think also in Batman Begins, Batman Begins as well, I think.
Okay,
but
all right.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know.
You may be right. I don't remember the name.
I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, what struck me the most about this scene, I could be wrong about this, so you guys can help me. Wasn't there supposed to be like a shipment coming in the docks at some point? Like where did that storyline go? Why are there suddenly mushrooms everywhere? What happened to the shipment?
Presumably, I'm assuming that the shipment was either leaving from that place going to Arkham, or coming from Arkham to that place in order for them to grow more. I couldn't tell which direction that stuff was headed, but
okay.
The docks thing, I assume that's just a warehouse down by the docks, maybe not necessarily coming in on a dock. Yeah,
probably. But yeah, other than that, this scene, the scene with the drugs, there's not much to say. I think from my end, it was there. It's clear what the drugs do, I think.
Right.
So
yeah, you're right about let's move on a little faster here. Unless anybody has anything. Justin, you said it was a very important scene. Was there anything that hasn't been pointed out?
No, I think the important part there was finding out that it was Sophia's plan the whole time. And I think that leads to more suspicion on her part on how Oz knows about any of this. And so I think that's what she's paying very careful attention to. Because presumably if he was in on it from the beginning, he probably would have known that.
Yeah.
And all his correct, all his so far his wording on it has been like, Alberto didn't tell me the same way he didn't tell you, blah 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 blah. And it's like, that's why to her she's like, I know something's not right here, and I don't believe you. Yeah,
and there's always that little bit of suspicion, I'm sure in her head that, my brother was trying to make it seem like his thing. You don't know, but that adds to the suspicion, of course. So you see Sophia go back to the mansion. Vidi is there. He comes at her. He says, I thought we told you to leave. He's very suspicious of her and what she's doing. He tells her to leave again. He actually went as far as to get her a plane ticket. Says, you're out of here in 2 days. And if you aren't gone in 2 days on this flight, I'm going to tell them you were on that flight.
Yeah.
Basically just totally threatening her. I don't think we need to dissect that necessarily, but I think it just adds to the fact that one, they really don't want her around. I think they
Yeah.
know she's powerful. They know like she could also be a risk for them, as well as the fact that I don't think he's lying, and I really don't think she's one to be bullied around. This is
Well,
obviously going to come back.
that struck me. That struck me as weird, but also cool that he's not scared of her at all.
Right.
Which was weird, I think, if she would have committed those murders. So
Yeah.
there's still that lingers back to that mystery there. What happened there? I think. Yeah.
Right.
He must know that she's not like the psycho killer that they're pretending she is.
Sure. Yeah. They go to see the triads, and by they I mean Oz, Victor, and Sophia. Victor's driving this time. They leave Victor in the car. They go in to see the triads. While they're inside, this is a part of the story that I thought was really interesting, or part of the character development. Victor, a cop pulls up behind Victor. He tells him, get out of the street. This is very predictable, of course. You assume that the driver is going to get stopped by the police. Victor's super smart on his feet and tells the cop, basically his stutter is very bad at this point. He's incredibly nervous. There's a giant bag of drugs sitting next to him in the seat. He tells the cop, I'm just waiting on my boss. Cop finds a bunch of money. Victor says, I don't have any money. Cop says, have a nice day, and heads out. No, we don't all have to go around and talk each time, but if anybody wants to point anything out about that scene, I just thought it added a little more to the character development of Victor, for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think Penguin even told him in the previous episode. He's like, you have to think on your feet all the time, so to get out of every situation. So
Right.
it really is almost like in that moment he is almost becoming more of he's adopting the Penguin's traits,
Mhm.
and learning and putting it to practice too. So it was that was a really good scene. I like the sort of follow up shortly after where he's almost like bragging to his boss, like making him proud,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's like when a kid comes home from school and they tell their parents like, "Oh, I did this at school today," and the parent is so proud, right? So that's kind of almost the dynamic that I got from that. So yeah, that was a good scene.
We see Oz and Sophia interacting with the triads. They specifically talk to Link, who is second in command. Comes out. He clearly does not like Oswald, or I'm sorry, it's just Oz in the series, right? It's not Oswald.
It's Oswald.
Is it Oswald? Okay.
Yeah, his mom calls him Oswald.
Okay.
They all call him Oz. So.
Yeah. He doesn't like Oz. Oz owes him money. There's a big vengeance thing there, but they quickly get him settled down by talking about this new drug. They want to talk to the boss. They want to make sure that they can get them to help distribute this. And Link says, you guys are just going off on your own. What's going on? They tell him, no, we've got a connection. There's somebody on the inside that supports us, and it's Vidi. And of course, you get that the death stare coming from Sophia, kind of not really sure what's going on. And Link says, okay, he's got to call me. He's got to call and confirm that you guys are actually working together. And of course, at this point, Sophia says, what is the plan? After Link leaves, what is the plan? What are we going to do? Oswald assures her that everything's going to be okay. And that directly feeds into the next scene, which, of course, you have that interaction there with, you have Oswald and Victor sitting there eating. Oswald very vehemently defends Victor because he's stuttering as he's trying to order with the waiter. And the waiter, jumps in. And, of course, he's just trying to be kind and help. He could tell Victor was struggling. And Oswald jumps down his throat, tells him, you can't do that. You can't cut the guy off. He's trying to talk. And kind of sticks up for him. Whether that's out of an actual pure motive or not, who knows? But these scenes here, the whole interaction with the triads and the whole interaction just at the actual dinner table, anything there that you guys wanted to pull out?
Yeah, I think that was a really good scene right there at the table I'm glad you pointed it out, because again, it's this episode, and I think it's part of it feeds into the very ending payoff of the whole episode is we saw a little bit more of a nurturing of sorts Penguin this episode, where he's more encouraging of Victor, right? It was really almost like a tender moment between the two of them where he like toasts his dad and he's taking a genuine interest in Victor as a person, his perspective, where he came from, to learn more about him. And he gave him kind of a similar speech, like we have to, we got to fight in this world because it's unfair. And that little scene where he interrupts the waiter, it's about pride, right? I think there was a scene in the first or maybe the second episode where they're in I think they're on the subway or something, and Penguin doesn't sit down in the handicap chair because he has so much pride. He's like, I'm not going to take that help. I'm going to hold myself up on my own. Right. So it's kind of feeding into that, and he gives them the speech about, hey, let them wait on you. You can do it. You get the words out. You can say it. Don't let them interrupt you. Don't take any crap from any of them, even if in this case the waiter was well attended. So yeah, that was a really effective scene. And I don't want to jump too much further ahead. I'll let the other guys talk if they want about that scene.
I don't have much to say. I just thought it was pretty funny that I think he also told him the story about the cop and the money because he wanted the money back. Like he wanted Oz to give him $1,000 again, and Oz didn't go for it at all.
Right, it's like, I did good, Dad.
Yeah.
Can I get the money back? Yeah.
Yeah. But what really struck me is that Oz is fond of the guy now, as we also see in a couple of scenes later on. It's working both ways now. Like Vic is part of Oz and Oz is part of Vic now, which is pretty cool. It's not just a boss underling or boss henchman dynamic. I think Oz is also fond of this little guy now. So that's going to be pretty interesting later on, because I don't think Vic is going to get out of this show alive. So we'll see where it goes.
Justin, anything you wanted to pull on there? Any strings?
No. I think that was covered well.
Cool. So the next scene is basically, or the same scene. We see Oz go up to, I'm forgetting his name, the boss's wife.
Tina.
Luca.
Her name is Tina. Luca's wife. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Goes up to Luca's wife, Tina, and says, I need a favor. Next scene, you cut to Sophia and Oswald busting into either a hotel or apartment room of someone, and catches Tina and Vidi in the act, right? And of course, we knew from the previous episode that he had these damaging photos of them, but apparently that wasn't enough. He actually needed to catch them in the act to put them in a compromising position to get Vidi to do what he says. And he goes up, and then they kick Tina out of the room, which, by the way, she just totally willingly complies, it seems, with what Oswald is asking her to do, which, seems like they'd already had a relationship before, but she's being coerced in some way. And I have to assume that he's got some kind of dirt on her too, or else she just hates everybody and is conniving in some respect too. But they go in, they bust in, they tell Vidi, look, we need you to call Link, call the Triads, vouch for us. He starts mocking them. And of course he does the one thing you don't want to do. And he pisses off Oz, tells him he's nothing, calls him the Penguin, which is not Oz's favorite thing to be called, very clearly.
Yeah.
Oz jumps on him, crams a phone in his mouth, which is a unique way to try to murder someone, in my opinion, until the rage subsides. And of course, the bigger takeaway from all this is that Sophia sees all this. Yeah. Sophia sees the way this is going down. She sees the way that Oswald is so easily triggered. Maybe not easily isn't the right word, but she sees the way that he reacts in the situation.
She sees his pain points for sure.
Absolutely. Of course, Vidi eventually ends up actually making that call, and the next scene we jump to them in the club. Anything you guys wanted to pull out from there? I thought it was an interesting scene because I had a lot of questions specifically about Tina's motivations, but I don't know if that matters. But what about the rest of it? Anything there that you guys want to?
I mean, I think that what was interesting, I think originally when he goes and attacks Vidi, I think it was out of rage for what he said about him, but I think he realized it quickly and turned it around and was like, how are you going to say this about her and her ability and all this stuff? And like, I think that's what was kind of interesting, was that he knows he still needs to prove his trust. And there's a bit more conversation about that later on too, but he's still trying to show Sophia that he's on her side, right? Trying to convince her that he's on her side. And I think that it was kind of surprising in a way where he catches himself internally, it seems, because we don't really see that, but you could see the switch flipped, right? Where he's pissed and upset about what he said about him, and then makes that conscious decision to make it about her. And I thought that was interesting and shows how smart Oz is on his feet and quick on his feet.
Yeah, and I was go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, just was really quick. I was glad that we got payoffs for both the VD blackmail photos, as well as payoff for like, oh, how are they going to get this deal done with the triads? So I was afraid it was going to like carry over to the next episode. But again, the pacing of this show, they get like right to it immediately, and they like pay off both of those things. So I was really, really happy to see that. And again, it just speaks to the pacing of the show. So that was my kind of like my anecdote for that.
Yeah.
My one worry about this is that I don't understand VD's role anymore, because he buckled so fast, and he's like an underboss. So why is he buckling so fast? What is his role in the show going forward? Because he basically knows that they're like gonna screw Luca now. So that was a little bit weird, I think, or maybe not weird, but maybe that could have be done better or later. Or
in fact, I have in my notes for the show, I have that VD. I don't think VD is long for this world, because he's pissed off and been condescending to both Sophia and Penguin, and basically they have confirmed of his affair. So I'm like wondering, kind of like you, like what angle, like what route does he have left to play? Is he going to be like eventually be another giant wrench in their plans? You know, how loyal is he going to be to the family? Yeah, because I really like the actor. I kind of hope he's around longer. But we
need more Doug Stamper in the world.
Yeah, we need more Doug Stamper. Yeah. Frank Underwood to come around, like come to the door or something. But no, yeah. I'll be intrigued to see what his role is going to be moving forward. Because right now it's like what you said, Lockmore. Like, what role does he have left to play anymore? You know, but yeah, we'll see.
We jump to the club where the deal has been set up that they were able to do like a exhibition night of the drug and test it out in the club that night. Of course, the bosses are there and everything. But what we see is that Victor is going to be the bag man, and he's going to be the one that distributes the drugs. Apparently, that's a big deal. I've never been in that kind of situation, but the bag man is apparently a big deal. And so Oswald tells him he's putting a lot of trust in him, and he believes he can do it. The people who are distributing the drugs are the presumed escorts, right, from previous, and their boss is the one that Oswald originally gets the alibi from. And during this part where they're telling everybody what to do and telling them it's going to be 20 a pop, whatever, the boss, what's her name? Does anybody remember her name? The boss prostitute escort, whatever her name is, gives Oswald a kiss. And Sophia definitely sees it. Like she notices it. And I just thought that was an interesting point there. Because remember, she's his alibi.
Yeah.
And again,
she's his alibi. And
it's about points of leverage. It's about getting points of leverage for other characters and keeping those mental notes for sure.
It's all about those mental notes.
Yeah.
So I'll just blaze right through this scene. We see a very stereotypical club drug dealing scene for a little while. And I was a little nervous about this because I was like, okay, is it just going to be like your standard, well, everybody's in the club and they're selling drugs and everything is going great. And they are selling a lot and they're moving them until the point where Victor feels some vibrations and some, gets some shining lights and everything like that. And he starts having flashbacks or PTSD really of the night of all the flooding, which I guess, probably only a week or two ago, if we're talking about the time of this series. Yeah. But he starts getting those effects and he collapses and he, spills some of the drugs and eventually he's helped back up and heads to the bathroom while there's a negotiation going on with the Triad's boss, Zhao, and Sophia at this point also reveals that they gave them Bliss in Arkham and tells this, incredible story about how good it is and how much it can impact, etc. Let's go from the point, everything in the club up until the bathroom scene. We'll say that.
Zhao is from the Dharma Initiative.
Yes.
from Lost.
Yes.
Every time I see him, every time I
Yeah.
see that actor, I always think of the Dharma Initiative.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Good
forget.
actor. Good
yeah,
character
I
actor
forget.
for sure.
Yeah, he's one
Yeah.
of those actors where I've seen him in stuff. I just can't pinpoint other things that I've seen him in.
Mhm.
But I'm almost thinking, is he going to be one that's maybe in the Batman 2? Because I could totally
Possibly.
see
It wouldn't
him
surprise
as
me.
the head of
That's a
triads.
big character in across Batman lore.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, you're talking about one of the big crime families. Can we talk about the scene between Sophia and Zhao, the
Yeah.
negotiation?
Yeah, we'll include that.
That was probably that may have been my favorite scene in the whole episode, because the cell job that she does was so well done, because there's a grain of truth in what she's saying, right? She's like, listen, you're not just offering drugs to these people, you're offering them escape from the absolute horrible situation that they've been in just mere weeks ago. It's not like you're just throwing out meth onto the streets and just devastating
knowing they'll
people's
get
lives.
Addicted or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're offering these people an escape. It's like she's almost telling them you're going to be their savior of sorts, right? And just the way how convincingly she does it was really, really, really well done. And I was like, oh, that's an excellent angle that the writers took for it, and it was really, really. And again, it tapped into the very beginning of the episode where we see the perspective of this event from the most impoverished in the city and how it affects them. So there is a very large grain of truth in what she's saying. It's like, yeah, she's really not lying when she's given him that cell job. So yeah, I thought that was really, really well done. So that was probably one of my high points of the whole episode for sure.
What else, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I did find his like PTSD episode really interesting, because it just shows, obviously not besides the trauma, which is where all that's linked, but because of the pressure that he's been dealing with. Because during this whole time, we really didn't discuss it during the last few scenes, but he's trying to figure out the time when to tell Oz he wants to leave.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like he's dealing with that decision that that his girlfriend gives him from the second scene of the beginning of the show of come with me. He tells her, get a second, here's the money, get me a second ticket. I'll meet you at the station that day. Great. And during this whole time, he's looking for that opportunity. When they were at the restaurant, he was going to do it and then gets interrupted by the waiter. He's going to say, it seems, and that's what that bathroom scene is, where he's going to tell him at some point. And he's just trying to figure it out. So I think it's that he's super nervous. He has this pressure of dealing with the bag, knowing what like is in what's in it and the value of it literally. And then also with this heavy decision where he's afraid that if he tells Oz, I want to leave, he's going to die. And I think that you have that pressure plus, yes, the explosion sounds. It seems that it's part of that club set starts to trigger that, plus the lights and everything. And I did like how they intertwined that, where you see the bottles shaking when he drops the bag, the vials, you see the vials shaking with like the gravel bits on the roof and all that. I really, really like that.
Yeah. It was a cool cinematography moment.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah. Anything else from that whole sequence, including the discussion with Zhao? Block.
No, I think everything was covered well. I thought I was less a fan of the bottle shaking because I thought that was a bit that's typical plot point fodder with like the flashback at the beginning. But it was cool. It looked cool.
Yeah.
But no, other than that, everything was covered well.
So the next scene that I want to talk about, and I actually want to break this one down a little bit more, is just the scene where Oz goes into the bathroom, starts telling Victor that everything is great. They got the deal. Things are going to work out. And by the way, maybe it's just that he had to go take a piss. I don't know. But we know that he's telling, because during the negotiation, Sophia leaves and then lets Oz handle it the rest of the way. Oz, then the next thing he does, again, don't know the exact motivations, but he goes to the bathroom. He sees Victor and he tells Victor first that they got the deal. At this point, they're talking about it, and Victor's obviously very nervous. He's getting texts from his girlfriend at the moment. Oz sees the phone, says, "Give me your phone." Wants to know what's going on. Of course, they're doing illegal, crazy stuff here. He wants to know what he's in on, and finds out about the plans. and accuses him of a bunch of stuff, says he's going to steal his money, whatever. Victor's, of course, taken aback by that because that wasn't his plan at all. And proceeds to tell him, if you want to leave, leave. You've already got nothing. Why not keep having nothing? You could have been here and worked for something. Pulls a gun on him and says, "This is how you feel with me. You feel trapped. You feel like I got a gun to your head, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." All the way up to the point where Oz gets so angry, tells him, "Leave. You don't have to worry about anything." Victor's very taken aback by that because he's like, "Really? I could just leave?" And then Oz actually is so disturbed by it because of his a little bit of affection now for Victor. He goes out and has a drink before he ever goes and talks to Sophia. So I want to talk about that bathroom scene because I thought that was a big moment for those two characters specifically.
Yeah. I think Oz was hurt for the first time. We see some vulnerability finally in the character here in a big way. I think it harkens back to what I was saying earlier, that the relationship is now twofold. It goes both ways, which is very interesting. I think it also comes back in the final scene, which is right after, I guess. So that's the dynamic of the show now. I think it's no longer, when we started the show, we thought it was going to be just Oz and his rise to power, but I think it's Oz and Victor's rise to power and their relationship and how it devolves or evolves over the course of the show, which is very interesting here. I do think my only issue with the show so far, it sets up a problem and immediately resolves it. It's done it a bunch of times now, and it's doing it again here with the girlfriend and the leaving and him finding out. Maybe that's because it's only 8 episodes, but I think I want to see how that evolves over the course of the rest of the episodes. But they've done it a bunch of times now where there's a problem, it immediately gets solved. Here's another problem, it immediately gets solved. It's typical TV stuff, of course, but I think I want to see I want to see the grand plan. It's going to be very interesting to look back at the end to see how that all fits in, I think.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about this scene and the dynamics there?
Bill?
Oh, Justin, you can go. I think I yapped before you.
Okay. Yeah, I thought Oz's reaction, his immediate reaction, because at first you're right, Ben, like he's excited to tell Vic. He's like, "We got it. Can you believe it? Everything's going to be great. Everything's set. We're good." And then he hears the buzz of the phone and Vic grabs it and like tries to hide. And immediately his guard, like his guard gets up and he's like, "Give me that. I don't trust." Like now all that trust that he had went out the window for a moment to check the phone. And he sees like, "What the hell is this?" And what he asks first is, "What, you were going to leave and take the money?" Which also shows where Oz's mind is at, where ultimately what he does care about. And so, yes, I think there is clearly a relationship. We do see a bit more of that too between Oz and Vic, but still Oz's number one thing is power and money. And I like that because it shows the core of that character. It continues to remind you, it shows humanity in him. And then immediately it kind of like yanks it back to show it's like, no, this isn't a good guy. He's still a bad guy. Don't feel too bad for him or happy for him yet. Especially when he pulls the gun out. Vic is obviously terrified. He's stuttering like crazy. That's another thing. He stutters and Oz is like, "Come on, like out with it." So that's a complete flip from the restaurant scene where he's like, "No, take your time, force them to wait." Here he's like, "Out with it. Say what you need to say." So I really liked how again, it's revealed, you're reminded who Oz is. Oz isn't a good guy. He's understandable in certain circumstances, but he's not a good guy. He is very much a bad guy. And you see that through Vic. And I think, like Bill said, Vic, I think, is the audience surrogate through the entire show. Like we're kind of living it through him and seeing everything through his eyes.
No. Bill, wrap it up.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a parallel with the scene between Oz and Vic and the scene prior between Vic and his girlfriends. You have, one of these characters is like, "Oh yeah, we're doing great. He's shown doing really well," and the other character kind of drops a bomb on them that I'm leaving, and it's like, how do they responded to how do they react? And obviously Vic responded, much more restrained and reserved than.
He didn't pull a gun on his girlfriend.
No, he didn't pull a gun on his girlfriend. But I said previously that so much of this episode has been Penguin really doing the nurture over nature with Vic, being very encouraging, stick up for yourself. We got to fight for everything that we earn. And I think another quote he has is like, if you think you're nothing, then you are nothing. So it's like teaching him about pride and, sticking up for yourself. But in this one scene, Oz's nature returned to, the nature of who he is at the end of the day. Like he wants to lift this kid up and support him. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately for his own means, to pursue his own means at the end of the day. And he sure as hell not going to let this kid get in the way of his ultimate goals and aspirations and desires, right? For his own powerful aspirations. So yeah, that's what really stuck out to me. Like Justin said, at the end of the day, that's who he is. We certainly understand why he is who he is over the course of these 3 episodes. And so, yeah, again, it served as a really good reminder that at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, at the very core of Oz Cobb or Oswald Cobblepot or whatever his name ultimately becomes, that is who he is, regardless of whether he's interacting with Vic or Sophia or even the one escort girlfriend, I don't know, companion, whatever. At the end of the day, it's about his end goals, and he's not going to let anyone get in the way of that. And we certainly see that at the very last scene as well. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but yeah.
Well, let's move there right now. I can walk us through the rest of it, and we can dive into those final scenes. The next thing we see after the bathroom interaction is Victor coming out and realizing that he's gonna go. He's gonna go to the trains or to the bus station, meet up with his girlfriend, head out to California, be done with this life. And he realizes he has the keys to Oz's car. He gets in Oz's car, hops in, gets there, and he can see her at the bus and decides ultimately to let her go and starts driving back. During this scene until the end of the episode, I'm pretty sure, I just wanted to point out that there's a drum line just hammering the entire time. And it was phenomenal. Like it just that's when I looked at the time that had been gone through and I was like, oh my, how is it possible much time has passed? Yeah. But I wanted to point out those drums. It was amazing. I know that sounds so stupid, right? These drums were the favorite part of the episode, but it was. Yeah. So he lets her leave without him. And then Oz walks out and starts talking to Sophia. And Sophia at this point, she's happy the deal's done, but ultimately she's really interested in Oz and his motivations and ask him, was it worth it? And at this point is when we start to dive in a little more. He admits eventually he sold her out. He went from nothing to being something. Yeah, he's still not top dog. She mentions he's not a made man. He's still just, an underling. But he is, he's very proud of where he's come so far. And he does say, yeah, it was worth it. And so this is that point where we can discuss a little bit too. What was the whole situation? Did he totally make up everything? Did she kill like 1 or 2 guys and somebody else killed all the rest of them and they pinned it on her? Did he just really want to get to her and knew her dad would send her up a creek, to Arkham or whatever? There's that whole dynamic that kind of explodes and he admits it. And right as that conversation is coming to a head, the Maroney family, specifically Nadia and some of her henchmen, pull up and call him out. Tell him, we know you're 2-time and we've been watching you, etc. And at this point, you're like, I don't know if Sophia believes her or not or what's going on, but like in no scenario is it a good thing for the competing crime boss family to come in and accuse your business partner of something, whether it's true or not, right? And you kind of see that in her eyes. As we flip back and forth, we're constantly flipping back and forth perspectives. We see Victor, he pulls up, he sees Oz and Sophia on their knees with guns pointed to their heads. He does the instinctual thing and just drives straight into, plows into one of the henchmen with a gun, totally, crushing them up against another vehicle, presumably killing them. He's badly injured. Oz hops in the car and says, drive. They head out of there. No Sophia, by the way, guns firing at him. And he screams, we're in it now, kid, or something along those lines. And we cut to black. So take it from that point where Oz walks out to talk to Sophia until the end of the episode. Anybody can go. I'm not even calling people out anymore. Just do your
Well, I just want to mention, we'll get back to the hangman part, of course, I'm sure. But at the end, he also says very happily, I knew you'd come back.
Yeah.
Which told me that he does care about this kid. It's not just about the money, I think. It's not just about power and money. He genuinely cares about this kid. And he's very happy that he came back for him, not just because he saved him, but because it signifies that there is something here. They do have a relationship here, I think.
You have to assume Oz hasn't had a lot of close friendships, right?
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
So the fact that he maybe has one here is like
Yeah.
encouraging him. Yeah.
And as far as the hangman stuff goes, I think there's a reason they don't tell us what exactly happened, because they're going to show us at some point, probably, I guess, episode 7. That's a typical episode 7 episode, finding out what happened, and then the finale is like episode 8. I think it's cool that they built this mystery, but I also think there is more to it, and that she did do things.
Something.
Because otherwise she could have just said, no, it wasn't me, it was him. Like it's not just as simple as that Oz did it and framed her or something. No, there's something happened here. I'm guessing, I don't know what, that he protected her somehow and he took care of like half the guys, and then he made up this story that she did it all by herself, something like that. But something happened there clearly, which we'll find out. I think it's cool that they're building it up like that. I just wish they did it less in one episode and spread it more out, maybe. It would have been cool to let the mystery linger for maybe 1 or 2 more episodes, where, like at the start of this episode where they said, don't believe everything you read or don't believe everything you hear. Would have been cool if that lingered for a little bit longer than just outright saying, I'm not the hangman here. But other than that, huge. I thought this was great. I thought the ending was amazing.
Yeah.
Also really cool. I think the dynamic with Sophia is changing now because he left her basically. And he didn't leave her out of a strategic move. He basically said, fuck her. I don't know what he said exactly, but he said, who cares? Like, just go.
Yeah. Save his own ass kind of.
Yeah. So I wonder what happens next. The show is only 8 episodes, so maybe that relationship is already broken now. I don't think it is, but it'll be interesting to see how he gets out of this, how he gets to explain his way out of this. So I can't wait until next week. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it's interesting because when Vic pulls up, they're already on the ground. So we don't know how much time passed and what was said. We only know that Nadia came in and said, we've been watching you. We know you're full of shit. And then they were standing up. They were like, nothing had happened yet. So we don't know what she revealed to Sophia. Yeah. That might be why he's like, forget it, leave her, assuming that she'll get killed. And which is an interesting bet. And it's kind of almost stupid from Oz, as opposed to some of his other moves that are a little bit more strategic. So I don't know how that's going to play out. It is kind of the same thing we discussed last time with Vic on like, all these henchmen saw Vic, and how the hell are we going to like just pretend that didn't happen? Now we're running into this where it's like, Sophia knows that Oz just left her, right? Like how, even if she didn't realize who came to get her or to get him, he's still left without her. So like, how is that going to be, made up? And now he has no allies because the Maronis are obviously onto him, and he's burnt every bridge. So how is he going to get out of all that?
I also want to know how they got that car out of there after smashing it directly into another vehicle.
Yes.
What car is strong enough to keep driving after that? But that's another story. Justin, I wanted to say, I think it was purely out of self-preservation, because we know from the earlier scene that they took the weapons when they went into that club. I assume they did the same thing here. So he has no way. There's still other people with guns there. He has no way to defend himself or to defend her. So really it comes down to like, if I stay here, I'm going to die, and I am the most important person to me. So we will leave regardless of the later consequences. Yeah,
but I think it also now, again, brings to her mind the lack of trust, right? Like this is more of a reason to not trust Oz. Because obviously it would be shocking if she's dead in the next episode. I mean, it'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, but it would be very weird. So I don't know how that's going to play out.
Here's a prediction: she'll get captured, and he has to rescue her somehow. That'll be the next episode.
But then, like, they're still going to reveal to her everything, right? Like, it's just it's weird. Like, it's still, and I guess that's the drama of it. But it's just like that. That's kind of lame if that's what it is. Like,
I also think there's that sense in like crime families where you don't kill somebody at the top if you're the other guys because they're just going to go full bore on you too. So there's a little bit of mutually assured destruction there that they don't want to participate in, probably.
Yeah. I also liked Oz's emotion during that exchange with Sophia. Like he starts to tear up, explaining that, yes, he did it. That's what you want to hear. Like, and I don't regret it at all. I really liked his emotion in that. It showed, again, we don't know if he means that. I think he does. I think he actually does mean it.
He did, yeah.
Because everything that he said seemed true. Like, it didn't take away from his ultimate goal, which is to, I think it only reinforced his goal of having her trust him more, because he is willing to kind of be vulnerable in this regard and say, like, yeah, you know what? I don't regret it. And she obviously knows that he doesn't regret it. So yeah, I thought that was well done too.
Bill,
yeah, I think it that scene with Sophia kind of reinforced the previous scenes he's had with Victor in this episode, where you're really getting both sides of Oz in this episode really, really, really well reinforced, in that he can be very sincere. Like he was very sincere towards Vic and encouraging him, and boosting his pride and his self-confidence, and the common refrain of you got to stick up for yourself and fight for what you earn and what you deserve in this world. And on the other hand, he can intimidate him and point a gun at him and everything. His sort of his nature comes out in the end. It's the same thing with this Sophia. I think we all agreed that scene where he was getting choked up with her, describing how sorry he was, what happened to her and everything, and he was getting choked up. And I believe he was sincere, but at the end of the day, the Oz comes out again, where he's like, "Oh, do we leave her behind? Oh yeah, just screw her. Let's go. Let's get out of here." Right? Because at the end of the day, like with Vic, he's not going to let Vic or Sophia or anyone else get in the way of what his goals and aspirations and his desire for power is. And yeah, I'll be intrigued to see what the fallout is with that, because I think Sophia kind of suspects that he, or maybe all but knows that he is the one that killed Alberto, right? That's the son's name, Alberto, I think, right? Yeah. So, and I think that finding out that he was trying to go behind the Falcone's back with the Maronis probably doesn't surprise her either. So I'll be intrigued to see what her response is to Oz. Maybe, I think like Justin maybe suggested, or Locke suggested, he's the one that somehow frees her from the Maronis' capture, and that kind of wins him back into her good graces again. But another scene that stuck out to me is, again, Vic was kind of the main focus of this episode, is we kind of got his almost like reverse superhero moment, right? I think Spider-Man is the most prominent, where he's always conflicted between his personal, sentiments in his personal life and his personal desires versus his sort of professional superhero obligations, if you will. And at the end of the day, he always picks his superhero obligations at the cost of his personal desires, right? And we got that same dilemma from Vic, obviously, from a villain versus personal life scenario, when it's even more of an extreme decision, where he can leave all of that behind to be with a girl that, like we found out earlier in the episode, who he is so comfortable around, he never stutters at all. Like, he's just perfectly fine and calm and relaxed and vulnerable with her. But at the end of the day, he picks his sort of reverse superhero. He picks that life to be over his personal desires and happiness. He wants that sort of thrill, if you will, to be a villain, and potentially, maybe he has plans to eventually betray Penguin or whatever. So I really appreciated that arc. It kind of came full circle for him. And then I did have to chuckle that we got another scene of Vic slamming a car into something. So I kind of hope we get that as like a meme for like maybe 2 or 3 more times in this series where he just slams a car into something and it's more and more extreme every time. Because the first time he just kind of like rolled the car with a corpse in it. And this time he actually probably killed the guy by crushing him. So and that's why the car didn't fully destroy because there was a person.
Sure.
A cushion.
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
of course. Yeah. There's rib cages and vital organs in between. So,
Right.
it's
Yeah, they
fine.
definitely stopped cars.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
It's fine. But yeah, it was that was really great. And again, it's the ending. Like I said in the beginning, it just left me wanting to watch the next episode immediately. So, yeah, that was kind of like my takeaway from that sort of final sequence, if you will.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Cool.
really well done. Excellent.
Well, I think we all agree. Excellent episode. Maybe my favorite so far. There's a little bit more tropey stuff in here than I would have preferred, but I think that overall it really gets the ball actually moving. We start getting into real character development, and not only character development, but developments between characters, right? We see more interactions and more of the dynamics at play. Lots of mystery, lots of intrigue. Who knows where it's going to go? But that's it for episode 3 of The Penguin, episode 2 of Cobbletalk. However that's supposed to work. We really appreciate anybody who's stuck around this far. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on the alerts. If you're listening on podcasts, share it with a friend, whatever. We don't need the show to be gigantic, but it'd be nice if we had a few people interacting with us. I mean, we did on the last one too. Don't get me wrong, but we'd love that. We'd love for some people to let us know what you're thinking. What do you think's next? What do you think Vic's gonna do? What do you think Sophia's gonna do to Oswald, etc.? Let us know what you think as well. And unless you guys have anything else, I think we'll call it there. We'll try not to make the next episode 150% of the runtime of the actual episode. Okay,
we're veering into kind of funny territory here.
It's just such a good show. I can't help it.
Yeah,
help
that's
but
true.
Talk about. I don't know how. We'll talk about this another time. I don't know how else to break it down except for like this scene. This happened.
Yeah, true.
But, all right. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.